Good morning, colleagues. And my name is Ayman Omar. I'm with FAO in the regional office based here in Cairo as Senior Field Program Officer. And I'm very pleased to co-facilitate this together with my colleague, Dr. Jihan from WHO. Jihan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ayman. So greetings to all colleagues and partners. I'm happy to be with you in the CADRI Partnership Regional Webinar for the Middle East and North African region. I would like first to introduce myself. I'm Jihan Al-Badri, medical doctor working in public health for the past 10 years and a bit more. I'm from WHO. I work for the Country Preparedness and IHR within WHE in the WHO Regional Office for the Eastern Mediterranean. I will be also the co-facilitator from the WHO Regional Office side during this webinar. So I am really happy to be connected with you all today. Shall we move to the agenda items, Carla? Okay. So first, I want to apologize for not being able to give the floor to each and every one of you to run a round of introduction because of time limitations. But again, we thank all participants from different agencies for attending today's webinar. So welcome. This is a gathering of agencies and experts from the region, marking a wonderful illustration of humanitarian development partners. So moving to the objective of this regional webinar, we aim to introduce the CADRI digital tool functionalities to the CADRI partners regional experts who will be deployed either physically or virtually to support governments in the application of the CADRI methodology, and of course to roll out of the CADRI digital tool at country level. So the agenda of today's session starts with an introduction and rapid overview of the CADRI partnership. We will also look into the CADRI digital tool rationale and the applications of the tool. We will have a live quiz, so good luck to everyone. We will explore the CADRI digital tool functionalities. We will have a question and answer session. We love to hear from all of you. And then finally, we will go to a wrap up and next steps. So welcome everyone again, and over to you, Ayman.
Thank you very much, Jihan. Thank you. And welcome again to all colleagues. Just a few words of introduction before we dive into the diagnostic tool. It's mainly to say that the capacity for disaster risk initiative, this is what CADRI stands for. This is a global partnership composed of 20 member organizations, 14 UN agencies and 6 non-UN agencies. It's mainly intended to provide support to countries and strengthen country capacities to pursue integrated and coherent solutions to reduce disaster in a way that integrate disaster risk reduction with climate change, uphold certain principles like, leaving no one behind, conflict sensitivity, but also apply multi-hazard and multi-risk dimensional to its work. The way that CADRI provides support is mainly triggered by a request from the country. Then it deploys a team of experts to provide the technical support in different forms, depending on the needs and depending on the requirement. It pulls resources together and capitalize and leverage on the complementarities among different partner organizations. It coordinates its work from Geneva, and it has an interagency executive partner team composed of representatives of the UN agencies. It has also a secretariat and all based in Geneva. At each region, there are 1 or 2 organizations that co-facilitate and co-coordinate the work of CADRI in the region. In our region, the Near East and North Africa, it is WHO and FAO who is coordinating the CADRI. So far in our region, the work touches upon 3 countries, Iran, Jordan, and Sudan. In Jordan, the work started as early as 2017, where there was a capacity diagnosis of 8 sectors facilitated by a team of experts from different organizations. I think around 12 agencies were involved in that. That resulted in a national disaster risk reduction strategy and a UN disaster risk reduction programming framework. And the work will continue. There is an M&E work which will happen this year. It is an annual impact study of the work of CADRI in Jordan. In Iran, the work started, I think, in 2019 after the floods in Iran, and based on the request from the UN coordinator there was again an assessment, 6 sectors, that was in February 2020, and ended up with a draft UNCT programming framework and inputs to the national disaster risk reduction strategy. The third country is Sudan, and this is just the preparatory steps, and we'll be hoping that the engagement, physical engagement, will start soon. Lots of preparatory work is taking place right now. The work of CADRI, I think it is particularly on this diagnostic, capacity diagnostic and planning tool, is a real demonstration of the power of partnership. It goes hand in hand with the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction. This year will be under the theme of power of partnership, and that will be also on the 13th of October this year. So without taking more of your time, I would like to thank you again for making the time to participate in this, and I would like to hand off to my colleagues, Sophie, who will start talking to us about the CADRI capacity diagnosis tool. Thank you very much again, and over to you, Sophie.
Thank you, colleagues, and good morning. I think it's still morning for many of us. Let me introduce myself. I am Sophie Baroness, and I'm based with CADRI Partnership Secretariat in Geneva. And I work as a coordinator. I'm seconded by UNDP to support the coordination function for the implementation of our joint program, because our partnership is being implemented through a joint program, which is cost-shared by the different agencies. So today webinar, we wanted to really give you a bit of highlight on the capacity diagnosis tool, and that we've been developing together or updating together. All your agencies have participated over the past 2 years. And now we are getting very close to the release stage. So we will have a series of webinars. And this is the first one to really introduce the tool, but I want to talk to you now about the rationale for this revision. So moving to the next slide. Yes. So the CADRI tool, it has been in existence for the past, I think, since 2014. So this tool, we developed a capacity diagnosis methodology and approach to look at national, local capacities in disaster risk reduction in 2014. And the tool, as it stands today, still is really a mix of, the approach is a mix of semi-structured interviews, field visits, desk review of policies and plan, and the target audience for the tool are really the users. So in the first level, the government expert, UN country team experts, also experts from the National Society, Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, and of course all our agencies. But you know that we also have as users members of the UNDAC network and EU civil protection experts. So that's really the audience for the tool. it has been tested, this methodology, which exists since 2014, it has been tested in today, I think, 37 countries. And the ambition was also to really bring the humanitarian and development angles to disaster risk reduction together. It's government-led, it's multi-hazard, but the specificity of this diagnosis approach and this planning approach is that it is multi-sectoral. So it doesn't look at disaster risk reduction system only focusing on the coordinating government institution, but it does look at disaster risk reduction in health, in education, in water and sanitation, infrastructure, cultural heritage, migration. So it's a very broad sector coverage. What was the rationale to actually update our methodology? First, it was felt that the feedback we received from government and from UN country teams was that they felt that it had to be better contextualized, that the methodology should be much more flexible, adaptable to the country context instead of one-size-fits-all diagnosis. It was gender blind. And there was really a strong push from all our agencies to really say, okay, how do you use gender equity as a strategy to reduce risk, to reduce vulnerability and exposure to disaster risk? And so that's really and not flexible enough. So that's the main rationale for the revision. And throughout year 2020, we have actually revised together the content. It's really a radical change in terms.
We lost Sophie. Carla, we lost Sophie.
Yes, it seems she has connection problems. Ruben, would you mind taking over in the meantime?
No, okay. Sorry, colleagues. Well, apologies. While Sophie reconnects, I can continue with the presentation. Basically, what she was explaining about the process, the rationale for the revision of the tool, and what we are doing at the moment. So with the quality of the tool, we're looking at how to better integrate different components that we have seen. So we're looking at how also the capacity diagnosis could look at climate change issues, looking also at hazard-specific issues, and to integrate these components that were these key principles, leaving no one behind, conflict sensitivity, private sector. So the revision that was carried out by the different agencies was to work on these modules, the different modules that constitute the CADRI tool, and integrate these principles in these modules, so that when we provide guidance, when we're conducting the missions, the practitioners can find the guidance they require to implement the mission. Next one. An example of the type of change that we have implemented in the new modules, for instance, looking at one specific issue, one specific principle, that is conflict sensitivity. Carla? So here, looking we are looking at examples. We have in the generic module, one that talks about different general issues regarding the DRR in the countries. So how do we integrate this conflict sensitivity? So the issue was, okay, what are the key issues, the key questions that can lead us to, provide guidance to the practitioners to identify these conflict sensitivity issues in the country. Sophie, you're there?
I'm there, but I'm very happy that you're presenting the conflict sensitivity part. I wish to apologize to colleagues because since this morning I have crazy internet connectivity issues in Geneva. So I'm using my phone and my phone died. Would you like me to take over for this, for the conflict?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, the conflict sensitivity was among, climate change, leaving no one behind. This was really like the big push from the agencies in terms of improving the tool. And what we wanted to share with you is the few highlights of how we integrated conflict sensitivity in the capacity diagnosis. But this also can help in terms of identifying where the investments have to be made, what we need to take into consideration. So we give you a very, like really a few, we selected a few questions, but they are like a lot of questions and analytical fields that relate to that in the tool today. But for instance, to what extent the local development plan does include a provision to reduce the risk of social tension that could result from pressure, competition for natural resource due to climate change impact, etc. So, for instance, are there specific land tenure interventions to reduce conflict over land and water use? So that will be typically, but there are many, many examples of that sort. Then we also selected examples that come from sector tools, sector modules. So for instance, from the agriculture and food security module, when we look at the implementation capacity of the government in the agriculture sector, typically one question could be to what extent the local institutions working in the agriculture and food sector are equipped with crisis communications guidelines or mechanism to handle cases of misinformation related to food aid response with the view to prevent intercommunal tensions or violence. So that's one example, but again, many, many other examples. So other examples, financing, many, many, many questions that relate to financing and conflict sensitivity in terms of access, equal access to financing, for instance. So here we take an example from the cultural heritage module. To what extent, for instance, the financing that is allocated for the reconstruction of or the recovery of cultural heritage sites affected by disasters is equitably distributed to ensure that cultural heritage from different religious or ethnic groups receive equal attention. That will be typically one of the question. When it comes to knowledge, we took an example from the environment module developed by UN Environment with other agencies. So has the Ministry of Environment established a participatory mechanism to monitor the impact of extractive logging industries, for instance, on water contamination? And to what extent it's participatory, to what extent the report can be public. So there are a lot of questions relating to that. If we take another example of a question on technology and equipment, use of technology, access and use of technology and equipment for disaster risk reduction, we selected a question from the human mobility module. So which is to what extent they are like data protection measures included in the technology and equipment used to collect data directly from migrants. Do they include adequate protection to prevent misuse of data? So those are really a few examples, but very significant efforts have been made by your agencies to really make it real. And this is a good transition to the next slide, which is to show you, I mean, how the CADRI partners have worked to revise the capacity diagnosis module for the different sector. So you see the lead agency, FAO, taking lead on agriculture, UNESCO on cultural heritage. I mean, you see the different agencies listed here. You see the significant effort by UNICEF covering 3 modules: education, nutrition, and WASH. And also I want to mention how UNFPA and IFRC have worked very closely together to actually guide the integration of the leaving no one behind concern and gender equity agenda in the different modules, working closely with UN Women. So you see, so first, it's a big thank you to your agencies for this this effort. Maybe moving to the next. Now we wanted to talk to you about the imperative of digitalization, because it's not only about revising the content, it's also the way the tool is being made available. And why did we decide to digitalize? So of course, in the COVID context, I mean, the decision to digitalize was made before the COVID-19 pandemic, but in the COVID-19 pandemic context, it became even more relevant. But what was the intention behind the digitalization strategy? First level, it was really about customization. This is a direct government request. How can we better customize the methodology to the country context? How can we, for instance, select if the government wants to have a specific focus on drought, should the government want to have a specific focus on disability? Should the government, so there are many ways we can actually reframe frame the analytical frame for the capacity diagnosis. It's also a way to ensure real quality assurance. This will really help us ensuring that key principles such as leaving no one behind, conflict sensitivity are well integrated in the deliverable. It also enables automated visualization. So in terms of presentation, in terms of it's much makes it much easier. Maybe one more point is that the fact that it is digitalized now, it can also enable the government to use the tool without the CADRI support. Anybody can actually access the tool. And for instance, I'm thinking of the case of the Ecuador government. In 2017, we did run a training on the tool and methodology for the government of Ecuador, because they were only interested in the methodology, and then they used it for their own capacity diagnosis without any support from the CADRI partner. So we also want to make it this kind of public domain tool. Now, maybe this is really, I mean, I can talk more on the rationale for digitalization, but we can do that also during the Q&A. The idea of the digital tool is that it can also help us with hybrid mission approach. So this morning I was actually on a call, preparatory call for a capacity diagnosis with the Kyrgyz Republic, UN country team and government. And we were looking at how we can have this kind of hybrid approach where you have virtual support to the mission together with physical deployment of expertise, and how we can make it work. Now, I will hand over, I think, to my colleague Ruben, but thank you for your attention.
Good morning. My name is Ruben Vargas. I'm working also for the CADRI Partnership based in Geneva, and I work as a program specialist. So I'm going to explain you briefly, as we said in introduction, is how we are developing this tool to facilitate the process that has been previously described by Sophie and also by Ayman. So what is what we are doing now to implement the construction of this digital application. So the next slide. We already discussed and has been mentioned by Sophie, by Ayman about the purpose, no? And then there's one tool that meets different needs, and the idea is to help facilitate this process of developing this to conduct this assessment of capacities at the national level, diagnose the capacities to implement, to address DRR, climate change adaptation. So we have the tool, as we said, the idea of customization. So how can we go from, say, DRR climate change, or can we make emphasis on disaster preparedness or risk information capacity? So the idea is these tools should help us to facilitate this process. And the next one, and also we also mentioned this, as also was mentioned, the AMAN, no? That the results of these assessments are used to design plans to address the challenges that have been identified. So the diagnosis is transformed into a national disaster reduction strategy or national plan, different aspects. So all the results of recommendations are integrated in action plans. So this is basically thing. And then what we want to do, as I said, is make emphasis on how we are addressing this with the development of the digital tool. So the next one. Here we have the main functionalities. We have said this is what we want to facilitate this process, and then previously we only had this questionnaire. Probably if you're familiar with CADRI, you know the Excel file where we had all the questions that were with the purpose of guiding the different assessors, the practitioners that were going to conduct the assessment at the country level. So they, using this file, they could find the guidance to ask for the specific issues they would like to know about for assessing the capacities. So here we are. This is the basic architecture of this tool. We're having like an administration component, which is just to create the landing page, the application. So we're going to create there the missions. If we go to a specific country, we're going to create a mission for that specific country. We're going to also create the users who are going to participate in that specific mission, and we are going to also manage the question bank, these modules, the guidance that we are building with the experience of the different agencies. So it's building this question bank, and then through this module we can manage this process. We're going to see later that demo live. We also have another component, is the mission plan. So we are in the country, we are in the specific country, we are to conduct the mission. Then we are discussing with the government, with our partners at the national, regional level. Okay, what is the scope of this mission? What are the topics we are going to address? So we are going to customize our assessment, our diagnosis. We're going to look at these specific sectors, at these specific hazards, and we are going to include all these principles. So this mission planning is going to help us. These functionalities are going to help us to plan the mission, obviously. And then the other component there is the reporting mechanism, meaning we have a mission, we have a team that is conducting the mission, and they are already collecting inputs, addressing different issues that we wanted to address. They are collecting the information, and then the idea is that the tool also is going to facilitate the process of compiling all the information that the different assessors are collecting and generating the final report. It's a help to facilitate this process of the generation of the final report. The final report is going to include a series of recommendations on how to address the issues that were identified, the challenges that were identified, and then the tool also is going to have a component. It's going to help us with the prioritization and planning. Which priorities, which recommendations to implement first, which are going to have the most significant impact, which ones can be more feasible to implement in the short, long-term plan. So the idea is that the tool can help us to facilitate this process, and finally, to also follow up in the implementation. So this is basically the main modules to conduct this disaster reduction, this capacity diagnosis, and the idea is that the tool is going to help us facilitate this process. And the next one, just key component here is the way how we define capacities. This is nothing new because it's basically also comes from the previous experience, the previous tool, the methodology, but we are refining a little bit the definition of capacities. What are the elements that we're going to look at when we try to conduct these capacities diagnosis assessments? No? So here we have like the main components. We have 5 capacity dimensions: the governance, implementation capacity, financing, knowledge, and technology and equipment. These are the key areas where we say, okay, these key areas can define the capacities that the country have to deal with DRR. Go with the next one, Carla. Here, so we say, okay, this is the capacity dimension. This is the core element, governance. But then what are the elements inside governance? We're going to look at. So we have to split this, and we call it CD elements, or capacity dimension elements. And then we have, like an example, in governance, we're going to look at issues like the legislation and policies, the institutional mandates and arrangement, roles and responsibilities. So these implementation capacity, also different elements that are going to tell us about the capacity of the country to deal with DRR. So these are the capacity dimensions, and each capacity dimension has different capacity dimension elements. And this is going to be transformed on the way we structure our questionnaires, the guidance that we're going to provide to different assessors. That's what we show in the next slide. So we have like the capacity dimension level, we call, like, this is the key element that we're going to look at. We call it like correlated question. This is the central element. We need to assess, not resolve. This is what we want to know. What is at the governance level, how is the country doing? And then we use these capacity dimension elements to also build a series of questions that are going to help us to assess this governance. The governance is complex, different elements. So we're going to build these questions to assess the governance. And we call them the first order questions. Then the second order questions are more detailed guidance. When we look at say we're looking at governance is the dimension, we're looking at laws and laws legislation, and we want to look, okay, we want to look at these laws legislation specific details. So how were these laws, how was these laws prepared? Is that participatory approach? Is that top down? Is a bottom up approach? These type of things are going to also give us information about how these processes are being implemented in the country, and that's the way we are structuring the modules to provide the guidance to the different assessors. Also, it's gonna here we're gonna is an example of then again this approach, the methodology, because the idea is from the very like a general to very detailed, and then how this is split and how we are going to use this information to assess the capacity and to have like a final assessment of this capacity. So we have the capacity dimension, as I said, the correlated question. This is split into different first order questions, capacity dimension elements, and then the guidance. And we are going to score, say the assessors can score each capacity dimension element. Is going to provide, say, an assessment. It's going from 1 to 5, 1 being basic or not existent, and 5 being very good, like in this case. So we are going to assess these correlated questions. The assessor is going to provide a report, an assessment, with the justification, obviously. These are my findings. I have found this information. These are the documents that are supporting my findings. And based on these findings, I'm going to assess, to assign this specific score to this capacity, or this capacity dimension, these different elements. And then with that, if we go to the next one, we're going to, in the reporting phase, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but we are going to see, we started with the process. We say, okay, we are going to assess that in this specific country, we're going to assess the capacities at the general level, but also we're going to look at specific sectors. We're going to look at these specific hazards, and we're going to also look at these specific principles, how these principles, leaving no one behind, gender sensitivity, conflict sensitivity, have been integrated in the work that we do to reduce, to manage disaster risk. So all these elements are going to be integrated in the reporting, and we are going to have like a sort of summary that the tool is going to help us to develop. And it is what you see here in this spider diagram, where we look at the different components, different dimensions that we mentioned before: the governance, the capacity implementation, the financing, knowledge, the technology and equipment. We're going to see what the scores are, so we can identify where the challenges and also where the strengths of the country, and this is going to help us also to define then recommendations to address those specific challenges. This is the summary, but of course behind you have all the support, all the information required to support our findings. So this is basically the structure of the tool that we are building now. So it goes from more is to facilitate the process of conducting these capacity dimensions, starting from the planning of the mission, the implementation of the mission, and then the reporting, and moving on to the prioritization and definition of plans of action. Next one. And then with this one, hope we can move. I will give the floor to Carla, and then later on we're gonna have a short demo where you're going to see how these concepts that we just presented are being implemented in practice. We're going to see the live demo with the tool we have so far developed, and that will be with our colleague Bogdan. So, Carla.
Yes, good morning again, colleagues. We are going to start the quiz now, the live quiz. So I hope you have been paying attention and you're still awake and energized to do this quiz with me. The responses will be anonymous, so don't be shy. Please try your best to answer these questions, and we will start with the fun question, and you have to let me know if it works for all of you, because if not, I will also share the link in the chat. But first, let's see if everybody receives the question on their screen. So the first question of the quiz is, please look at the slide and tell me if this image is a picture or a painting. Can everybody see the question? Okay, I'm already getting some responses. I know it's a difficult question. It's a great image. And it's actually not a painting, but a real picture, which is pretty amazing. So moving on to the next question. How many organizations constitute the CADRI Partnership? Is it 10, 15, or 20 partners? That should be an easy one. And I can see that indeed most of you got it correct. Of course, it's 20 partners constituting the CADRI Partnership. So the next question is about the mobilization of CADRI services. So the CADRI Partnership services can be directly mobilized by UN country teams without a government request. Is this true or false? So this is interesting because many of you think that this would be a false, but actually it's true that the CADRI Partnership services can be directly mobilized by UN country teams without the need for a government request. This government request can be made official at a later stage. Of course, the CADRI services have to be requested by the government because that's one of the most important principles of the CADRI services, that it should be government-led and based on the demand, but it can be directly mobilized by UN country teams. Moving on to the next question. Who are the CADRI host agencies in the MENA region? Is it UNFPA or UNICEF and UNDP, WHO and FAO, or FAO and IOM? This should also be an easy question. Yes, as most of you answered correctly, it is of course WHO and FAO. So you already were introduced to this webinar by Jihan and Ayman, so representing the WHO and FAO regional office. And moving on to the next question. How many countries have received support from the CADRI Partnership in the MENA region to date, not including potential future engagement, but have already received support? Is it 1, 2, or 3 countries so far? Okay, also this question most of you got correctly. It is actually 2 countries, Iran and Jordan, not including Sudan, which is a potential future engagement to be confirmed. So moving on to the next question. The CADRI tool was revised to integrate leaving no one behind and conflict sensitivity principles. Is this true or false? Yes, this is of course true. 100% of you got this question correct. That's very good because it's very important to us that this is super clear. And now I'm moving on to the last question. The 5 CADRI executive partners have been invited to join Elon Musk in his flight to Mars. Is this true or false? Although we all wish it were true, unfortunately, the invitation got lost in the mail. So I think they this time they won't be able to join, but well. So I want to thank you all for your participation in this quiz, and I hope you're all ready for the next part of this webinar, which is the exploring of the tool, which is going to be a live demo by our colleague Bogdan. And with this, I hand over to Bogdan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Bogdan Spotaru, user interface designer, and I have joined CADRI early this year and helped with creating the digital tool. Today, I'm going to present you some key features of the tool we are developing. I will share my screen now. At this point, the tool has a functional interface, and we can show you some of the most important functionality that will be developed inside the tool. We are still working on the back-end development of the tool, but for today's demo purpose, I can shortly present you the most important section of the tool. So the tool is not online and live yet. What you see now, it's just a demo from the development process. In the first part of my demo, I will give you a quick tour of the main structure of the tool. Users and agencies can access the tool through a landing page that will provide a login form. And of course, users and agencies can request access to the tool by clicking on Request Access. Once they log in, they will end up in the main dashboard of the tool. Depending on their role and permission, they can access more or less information from the main dashboard interface. Here in the dashboard, we have split the structure into 3 main sections and 1 help and support center. The first section is the mission and country, where users can create a mission or manage a country. The second section is the users module, where an admin can add and edit the users inside the tool. The third section is the question bank, where we store the question into the database and manage the filter and taxonomies like hazards, module, and capacities. In the help and support centers, user can find information on how to use the tool, how to create content, and also see video examples on how to manage the content of the tool. Now, I will present you the main core of the tool, which is the question bank. The question bank is a very flexible feature of the tool and can be customized in many different ways. Here, all the questions displayed under different levels are stored in our tool. Users and agencies can build a set of questions to use in their mission or individually outside of a mission purpose. The question bank can be filtered by different tags, like capacities, report types, modules, hazards, and principles. Currently, the questions you see in this demo are just a small part of the database. They are used just for this demo purpose. In the live application, we will populate the question bank with a larger volume of questions. Agency and users have options inside the tool to recommend and propose new questions that will populate the question bank. Now let's do a simple example and filter the question bank by selecting, for example, a capacity and a module. Let's select a capacity like governance and a module like generic. The question bank will filter the questions taking in consideration this tag we selected. We'll display core aggregated question, first order question, and second order questions related to governance and generic. Again, these questions are just for demo purposes. And of course, in the live application, when doing a filtering like this, the results will display a larger volume of questions. Let's do another example by selecting a capacity, for example, financing, and a module like human mobility. The question bank will filter taking in consideration financing and human mobility and will display the same core aggregated question, first order question, and second order question related to financing and human mobility. In the third example, I will filter the question bank, for example, by a capacity governance and a principle, like leave no one behind. The question bank will filter again the results, taking in consideration the tag we just selected, governance and leave no one behind. Like I said before, the purpose of filtering the question bank is to allow agencies and users to build custom set of questions which they can use in their mission or individually outside of a mission purpose. In the second part of this demo, I will cover the process of planning a CADRI capacity diagnosis mission, customizing of the capacity diagnosis based on country context and interest. The first step in the process of planning a capacity diagnosis is to create a mission. from our interface, we are going to the section where the missions are created. On this section, the user will select first the mission type. There are 4 types of mission which can be selected: a capacity diagnosis, a scoping mission, a prioritization and planning, and a monitoring mission. Let's select, for example, a capacity diagnosis mission. Then the user will select a country. Let's select, for example, Sudan. We can select a type of report that will be created at the end of the mission. We have different type of report we can select. Let's select, for example, this one. We add a date, and the title is generated automatically from the mission information. The next step will be to select the modules. We can select one or more modules. Let's select, for example, generic, human mobility, and health. After, we can select some hazards. The same, we can select one or more hazards. Let's select earthquake, for example, floods, drought. Based on this selection, in the back end of the tool, a frame composed from the specific question filtered by this selection is created automatically. We are calling this a country analytical frame. The second step in the process of planning is to map and deploy a multidisciplinary team. From our interface, we are going to the mission details we just created. Here, after creating the mission, a user with a specific role can build and structure a team which will work together in the mission process. For each of the users selected, a role will be assigned depending on his main specialization. The next step in the process of planning will be to assign responsibilities to the team members. This process will happen in the question frame we initially created when we started the mission, the one we call country analytical frame. Here, a set of questions grouped under a specific module and a capacity can be assigned to one or more users. In the third part of this demo, I will talk about conducting the capacity diagnosis. At this step, inside the mission, all the team members have assigned to them a specific set of questions. Depending on their specialization, team members have options to refilter the set of questions assigned to them. For example, they can refilter the set of questions by adding a new principle, like leave no one behind. All the questions will be filtered taking in consideration the new tag we just selected. Next, I will present you the tool ability to monitor progress, compile the information gathered by the assessor, and build a final report. From our interface, we are going back to the mission section. Inside the mission section, users can follow the progress of data provided by each member. Going inside his assigned set of questions, which we call the user analytical frame, each team member will insert data into his set of questions. For example, he can score the question, he can add findings, justification, and recommendations. All the data gathered from the users will be compiled into a final report. The final report will contain all the mission data inserted by the users, along with the diagrams that will automatically created based on the scores and users' information. In the last part of my demo, I will talk about building knowledge on sector expertise. From our interface, we are going into the users module where we create new users. For each of the users added inside the tool, a profile will be created. Information like his primary area of specialization, geographical coverage will be stored inside the tool. And this way, a global expertise database will be created inside the tool. This will facilitate the planning of future missions and will allow the tool user to find an expert easily based on his profile. That's all I wanted to present you for today. It's just a short introduction of the tool. I hope you enjoy it, and I will hand over to my colleagues, which will start the question and answer session. Thank you.
So colleagues, we did have actually, I mean, you know, we run this webinar for different regions, and we had a lot of questions in terms of, and one of the most common one was, I wanted to touch on that in case it was not done. It was to what extent an agency can use the tool, can use their module, like for instance, to what extent UNEP can use the environment module, UN environment can use the environment module for a specific diagnosis of DR capacities in the environment sector, irrespective of is it through the CADRI partnership or not. And yes, that's possible. Any agency, in fact, those modules will be available to the agencies to actually run their diagnosis that could be sector specific, or exactly like a government can also use the tool to run the diagnosis independently from the CADRI partnership expertise. So that's one point I really wanted to clarify. But now, yes, opening the floor for questions. Or comments or feedback. Please don't be shy. Or was it all very clear to you? So I see there is a question from John Bono from UNICEF, but maybe John, you can ask your question orally. You're on mute, I think. Same question.
Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Now you
Yes,
can.
yes, very well, very well.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. This is a very useful tools, and it looks really like up to date in terms of the following. And I remember Sophie issues to do with the mission and the follow up on the recommendation and things like that. Is this going to be open to public? I mean, if it is open to public, then the control of those informations, how is it going to be controlled, and the security of it? Because as well, there are some. I'm sure that it's a general information, but not each country would like to expose themselves as well to the public, that to know what they are planning. Over from my side.
Yeah, that's actually a very key question that we considered because this happened in the past. If you go to the CADRI website today, most of the capacity diagnosis reports are uploaded, but not all, because in some instances the government has requested restricted circulation. So yes, it's possible in the sense that only the mission admin, there is this function of mission admin, has access to the country space. So yes, in any case, de facto, you cannot have access to all country spaces. For instance, even yourself, John, if you are assigned to cover the WASH sector in Sudan, you will not be able to access the space that is open right now for Kyrgyz Republic. I mean, anyway, the tool is not online yet, so I'm talking virtually right now because it's not the case yet. But so that's, yes, that's protected. Then the final product of a capacity diagnosis, if it is in PDF form and the government agrees to release it, then it will be posted on the website. But never ever anybody would have access to the full the whole findings and discussion, etc. No, only the team members. Similarly, when a government wants to use the tool for their own purpose, without CADRI support, without outside expertise, they will have an admin profile, and they will have their own space. I mean, that's what we're trying to build actually. Right now with our back-end coding colleagues for the past months. But yes, security is really taken into account, of course. Thank you, John, for this question. I saw that there is another question, but it has disappeared from my screen.
I think it was the same concern, Sophie, about the security and the access.
Okay. But there is also from Mirna a question about the limitations for the tool, which is a very interesting one. I can tell you what we've been struggling with is how we can help the construction of an analytical frame together with the government that is not overwhelming, because there can be like 15,000 questions. Obviously, in the end, you will only use, I don't know, a few. You will maybe only use, 100 or a little bit more. So it really, and then so that's really the functionalities we try to work on. Okay, can we have like must assess field, and then if we want, we add only gender equity questions, or we add only whatever avalanche related question or sun and the storm related questions. So yeah, for us, the limitation is really, it's not a limitation, but the difficulty in designing the tool is to ensure that we still have a manageable analytical frame, that it does not become too big. But we're getting there. Also, the idea of this tool is to build the analytical frame with the government during the scoping mission. So to be able to select the key analytical fields we want, the government wants to see covered. I don't know, I mean, what do you think, Ruben? I think this question about the limitations of the tool, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, it's what you were saying.
Good questions.
It's an excellent question because, in fact, as we were saying, the idea is to facilitate the process. So facilitating this process meaning providing the very the right guidance, the proper guidance to the assessors. So and this guidance is provided through the questions, so that they can find the most appropriate questions in relation to the topics they want to investigate in the country. So this is still what we're doing. We're working this using the the process of tagging these questions with the labels that allow us to query the question bank and extract that information that most relevant, and that the user can also use these queries. So, but this is like a real challenge. So I think also the other way we are saying the tool is going to help to facilitate the process of preparing the final report, but it's not going to be like automatic reporting. They provide, like we show these graphics. They help us to compile the information, but still we need the team has to come together, review the inputs, and make the adjustments and final decisions to prepare the final report. So it's going to facilitate the process, but it doesn't mean that it's going to do all for us. We just to facilitate that process, the integration, the coordination among the different actors participating in the process.
Yeah, also maybe there is maybe one more point in terms of the limitations of the tool, because of course there is the digitalization functionalities, but in terms of the content today, the tool does have limitations compared to the ambition the agencies had initially. For instance, we wanted to have a lot of hazard-specific questions or field, if you want, and we don't have as many as we wanted. For instance, if you select avalanche, I don't think right now we have a lot of pointers to what capacities have to be put in place to manage or to prevent the risk of avalanche, or to manage the risk of avalanche. So, but at the same time, there is a functionality in the tool to actually add questions. So if you participate to a capacity diagnosis as a CADRI expert, you will be able to say, oh, I don't think this is good enough. I don't think there are enough questions on epidemics or anything. I'm proposing to add this, or I'm proposing to add that. So the tool can constantly evolve in terms of its content, and it can constantly be updated. And it's extremely easy. That the functionality we have really put a lot of energy in, that it can constantly evolve to be improved based on the collective intelligence and knowledge of all the CADRI partners experts. Is there any other question relating either to the content or to the users? To the usage? No? If no specific questions at this stage, we're just going to touch briefly on the next step. There will be, so the tool is not yet online because we are still working on the back-end coding, which takes significant time and energy. But we are really getting closer to the end, to the release of the tool. And then we are planning another webinar session where basically you will be able to register and navigate the question bank. So it's some kind of a hands-on tutorial module to be able to use the tool for your own use, or if you are deployed on a CADRI Partnership interagency mission. So that will be the next webinar. And we are also planning thematic webinars, like how do you use the Leaving No One Behind interface? What can you find in it? How is this going to help you operationalize Leaving No One Behind ambition in your DRR programming? So there will be a specific module on this, specific module on conflict sensitivity. And then, of course, in the future as well, we are planning sectoral webinars. So there could be like a special focus on agriculture and food security system, or WASH, or cultural heritage. And then you will be able to access those sector webinars. So the sector webinars, we will not do them by region. We will do them globally, probably. But the next one, the tutorial, will probably still be by region. So we hope to see you again for the next webinar on the tutorial. And in the meantime, you can see the contact of your regional host agencies or us at the CADRI Secretariat in Geneva, should you have any question, or you can also request, of course, access to the question bank as it stands today. Ayman and Dalia, maybe I'll let you conclude. And then if there are no more questions, we can maybe close. But thank you. Thank you, Ayman and Dalia. And
thank you very much,
for
Sophie, and thanks to all colleagues from the Secretariat who made the presentations, and thanks to colleagues from the region who joined us. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Yeah. Have a
Bye.
good rest.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, colleagues.